There's a reason you feel powerless, and it's not because you were born that way. It's because you were trained to be weak, conditioned, programmed, subtly shaped by culture, school, family, and media into a version of yourself that could be controlled, guilted, and silenced. Not all at once, not violently, but slowly, systematically. You were taught that obedience was virtue, that silence was maturity, and that self-sacrifice was the ultimate proof of love. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that you were once powerful. Carl Jung saw this coming long before most. He believes society doesn't just form us, it distorts us. It takes the raw, untamed, instinctual human being and molds it into something digestible, palatable, predictable. In doing so, it doesn't create peace, it creates repression. And that repression of anger, desire, pride, ambition, defiance is what Jung believed was at the root of modern weakness. Not physical weakness, psychological weakness, the kind that keeps you small, anxious, overly accommodating, endlessly apologetic for your own existence. The kind that makes you afraid to speak your mind, set boundaries, or chase what you want without guilt. The kind that teaches you to doubt your instincts, second-guess your desires, and call your strength too much. And worse still, you were praised for it. When you swallowed your anger instead of expressing it, you were called mature. When you kept quiet instead of challenging authority, you were called respectful. When you put others first at the cost of your own needs, they called you selfless. But what no one told you was this: those weren't signs of goodness, they were signs of conditioning. You were being rewarded for abandoning yourself. Jung's darkest realization wasn't just that society represses the individual, it was that most people grow to love their chains. They defend them, they decorate them, they fear what life would be without them. They internalize weakness so completely that anything strong, assertive, or unapologetic feels wrong, feels dangerous, feels shameful. So what do we get? We get men who are afraid to speak up because they don't want to be seen as aggressive, women who shrink themselves to seem more likable, employees who never push back against toxic work environments, friends who say, "It's fine," while dying inside, parents who guilt their children into staying small, lovers who confuse jealousy with passion and control with love, and in the middle of it all, people wondering why they feel so anxious, so numb, so disconnected from themselves. It's because we were trained to be safe, not sovereign. And make no mistake, this training was deliberate, not by some grand conspiracy, but by the slow grind of survival-based culture. Parents raise children to follow rules because it's easier. Schools reward quiet compliance because it keeps order. Religious systems teach fear of one's own thoughts and impulses because it maintains control. Media sells comfort and numbness as lifestyle choices because it feeds profit. Every system depends on your weakness to function, because weak people don't resist. They adapt, they tolerate. Jung knew this. He said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why terrifying? Because to accept yourself is to reject the training. It's to say, "I am not here to be digestible. I am not here to be liked. I am here to be whole." But most people don't want that. They want approval, belonging, certainty. They want to be told what to do, how to live, who to be. And they'll trade their fire for it. Every time, they'll trade power for safety, passion for predictability, vision for comfort. And in doing so, they become ghosts. Ghosts in their own lives. Drifting, disconnected, number, outwardly polite, inwardly resentful, overachieving and underfulfilled, smiling in photos, screaming in silence. They might look like they have it together, but look closer and you'll see it. They are dead inside. Because strength was never about yelling or fighting. It was never about domination or loudness. True strength, Jungian strength, is the courage to live from the inside out. To say, "This is who I am, and I won't apologize for it." That kind of strength is dangerous, not because it harms others, but because it can't be controlled. And control is what the world worships. That's why so many people hate confidence. Not because they're offended, but because they've been trained to see it as arrogance. That's why people attack directness. Not because it's wrong, but because it triggers the part of them that gave up their own voice. That's why so many powerful people walk alone, not because they're broken, but because they refuse to stay in cages others accepted. Think of Malcolm X. He was hated not because he was violent, but because he was unapologetically fierce in his truth. Think of Frida Kahlo, who painted her pain in bold color and refused to make herself small for anyone. Think of James Baldwin, who said things no one wanted to hear with such precision, it forced society to look in the mirror. These were not nice people, they were whole people, and that made them dangerous. That's what Jung meant when he talked about the shadow. Not just the dark, hidden parts of you, but the power you buried because it scared others, because it scared you. Your rage, your eroticism, your hunger for greatness, your pride, your defiance. These were all carved out of you in the name of goodness. But goodness without power is just submission dressed up in virtue. And you were trained for it, rewarded for it, praised for it. And now you feel the consequences. You struggle to say no. You shrink when someone challenges you. You wait for permission before taking action. You look for signs of approval before speaking your truth. You feel uncomfortable when others admire you. You sabotage your own success. You call it humility, but it's fear. You call it being easygoing, but it's avoidance. You call it being kind, but it's self-erasure. This isn't who you are, this is who you were taught to be. You were taught to be afraid of your own power. Because if you owned it, you couldn't be controlled. You couldn't be guilted into compliance. You couldn't be kept small. But that power never left. It's still in you, beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, beneath the masks you wear just to make it through the day. And it's not coming back through motivation, not through feel-good quotes, not through productivity hacks. It comes back through confrontation, through the terrifying, liberating process of seeing how much of your life was built to avoid your own potential. That's what Jung meant by individuation. Not self-help, not improvement, reclaiming, remembering, re-inhabiting yourself. But before you rise, you have to see the prison. You have to see the programming. You have to name the systems that raised you to play small. You have to look your internalized weakness in the eye and say, "You were never mine. You were given to me." And when you say that, when you see it fully, you feel something stir. The fire. It's not loud at first. It flickers, a spark, a pulse. But it's there. And once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. It grows. Slowly. It wakes up parts of you that have been asleep for years. You remember how it feels to want something without guilt, to take up space, to speak from the gut, to trust yourself and the people around you. They'll resist it because they've only known the trained version of you, the obedient one, the agreeable one, the one who didn't ask for much. But that version of you is dying, and in its place, something real is being born, something dangerous, something sacred, something that can no longer be tamed. Now that you've seen the training, really seen it, not just the symptoms, but the structure of the entire system that taught you to shrink, to silence yourself, to wear a mask just to survive, the question becomes, what now? Carl Jung believed that awareness was only the first step. To see the problem is not enough. You must unlearn the obedience that has shaped your personality. You must peel away the layers of conditioning like old skin, knowing that beneath it lies something ancient, primal, and real, yourself. But beware, reclaiming your strength will not feel safe. It will feel wrong. Because weakness has been your comfort zone. Niceness has been your shield. Compliance has been your currency. To live outside of that conditioning is to move through the world without a script, without the need to be the good one, the humble one, the soft-spoken peacekeeper. And when that identity dies, there's grief, there's disorientation, but there's also freedom. Jung knew this would terrify people. He wrote that most people prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty. And that's what the process of reclaiming strength is. It's stepping into the unknown. It's learning how to be strong without becoming cruel, how to be honest without becoming arrogant, how to be powerful without needing to dominate. The first battle is internal. You'll feel guilty for standing up for yourself. You'll question whether you're being too much. You'll hesitate to speak when you know the truth. Why? Because the inner critic, the internalized voice of the system that trained you, will scream. It will say, "You're selfish, you're rude, you've changed." But what it's really saying is, "You're no longer in the cage I built for you." That voice is not your conscience, it's your conditioning. You must learn to tell the difference. True strength is not about force, it's about congruence, when your internal truth matches your external life, when you no longer hide, edit, or contort yourself for the comfort of others, when you say what you mean, when you ask for what you need, when you stop negotiating with your worth. This is when things start to shift. You'll lose people, not everyone, but the ones who only knew you as a doormat, the ones who fed off your guilt, the ones who kept you small so they could feel big. You'll lose relationships built on performance, on obligation, on mutual unspoken agreements that you would never grow too much. But here's the beauty of it. You'll make room for the right ones, the aligned ones, the people who meet your strength with their own, people who don't flinch at your fire, who don't demand you be less, who don't get uncomfortable when you own your power. People who love you, not because you stay small, but because you've become whole. That's the mark of real transformation. You stop being a mirror for other people's comfort and start becoming a beacon for authenticity. That scares some, but it frees others. And in the process, you'll discover something else. The people you used to envy, resent, or fear were just more free than you. The confident person at work, they're not arrogant. They've just stopped apologizing for existing. The assertive friend who sets boundaries, they're not cold. They've just learned the difference between giving and self-betrayal. The person who walks away without drama, they're not heartless. They've just learned to protect their peace. You'll start to see that your discomfort with power wasn't about the power. It was about your own disconnection from it. And this is where Jung's darkest realization becomes his most liberating truth. You were trained to be weak, but you can train yourself to be whole. Not through dominance, not through ego, but through honesty, through integration, through the radical act of becoming someone no longer fueled by fear, guilt, or shame. You were not born to tiptoe around other people's insecurities. You were not born to dilute your thoughts so others wouldn't feel threatened. You were not born to be soft-spoken when the truth needs to roar. You were not born to suffer quietly and call it maturity. You were born to become, to expand, to walk through the fire of your own undoing and come out on the other side, untamed, aware, unapologetically aligned with yourself. And yes, it will be lonely. At first, because most of the world is still asleep, still praising obedience, still worshiping politeness, still sacrificing truth for comfort. You'll feel like an outcast, but in that exile you'll find clarity. You'll find peace that no longer depends on performance. You'll find a voice that doesn't tremble. You'll find people who recognize your strength, not as a threat, but as an invitation. Because that's the ultimate gift of reclaiming your power. You give others permission to reclaim theirs. Your courage becomes contagious. Your integrity becomes a mirror. Your fire becomes a torch in the dark. You stop being part of the herd and you become something rare, an integrated human being. Not divided, not fragmented, not trained, but whole. Carl Jung warned that the individual who truly awakens will face resistance, not only from society, but from within. And he was right. Because awakening destroys your comfort zones, it dismantles the illusions you built your identity around. It leaves you naked in the mirror, staring at someone you're still learning to trust. But once you trust that person, once you see the strength in your own eyes, once you feel the ground beneath you that can't be taken away, nothing owns you anymore. Not approval, not guilt, not fear, not the past, not the world that raised you to be tame. And that's when you know you've crossed the threshold. You no longer wait for permission to speak, to act, to dream. You no longer need the gold stars of approval from systems that never cared about your soul. You no longer call your strength too much. You know now it's just enough. You were trained to be weak, but your soul was never meant to be small. And the moment you reclaim what you gave away, your voice, your fire, your spine, you don't just become stronger. You become sovereign. You become real. You become whole.